Top of the Props is brought to you by Barkingham Palace Dog Grooming, 1/10 Hollylee Road, Lemire. Find them on Facebook. Barkingham Palace Dog Grooming Macarthur, where every pup's a king or queen. And GameView. GameView is a statistical application that allows you to track, analyse and improve your team's and players' performance by capturing team and individual player statistics. Find out more, gameview.com.au. And it's now time for episode 15 of Top of the Props, and I do have to apologise, it's been a few weeks since we've been able to record an episode, but we are back, and this evening I'm speaking to, as I just mentioned on Twitter, if you follow me on Twitter, another Campbelltown boy, and who actually was born, if I'm right, he can correct me in a second if I'm wrong, but we were both born in Cogra as well. But this bloke, he played 150 top flight games at the West Tigers, the Cowboys, the Magpies and Salford. He also represented City Origin in 2008. And he's a man mountain, and he was a great player, particularly in his time at the Cowboys and, of course, over there in the Super League in Salford. It's Mr. Ray Cashmere. G'day, mate. How are you? Thanks for being on the show.
G'day, Curtis. Good, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
So look. I'm gonna say, am I right there? You were born in Cogra, and then you moved across to Campbelltown?
Yeah, I was born in St George Hospital. Both my parents grew up at Penshurst, and they moved out to Campbelltown when I was about 2.
Yeah, they're funny because my mum went to Penshurst Girls, and all my family, all my mum's brothers and sisters and all that, played over there and went to school over there, and then picked up everything and moved out to Campbelltown as well. So. A small world, mate, but I do want to go straight into your NRL debut. It's round 21, July 24th, 1999. It's a Saturday Arvo game. I remember that because I was there, and it was a tough time for the Magpies, but I guess it's a special time anytime you make your first grade debut. Do you remember much of the week? Because you were obviously named in the 17. Can you remember the moment you were told you were going to get your start and just run us through the emotions and getting out there and running out in front of what I would imagine is plenty of friends and family as well?
Yeah, I do for sure, mate. I remember it. I was massive for me at the time because I was playing A grade for Macarthur Saints the year before, and then we lost the grand final that year, and then I went to an open trial at St Greg's, and Tom Madonicus was there, and the Jersey Flegg coach at the time, the late great Marshall Rogers, and I tried for them there and made the train-on squad and had to prove myself in the trials and stuff like that, and then did that, and I played Jersey Flegg all year. Played towards the mid to late season, played a game of reserve grade under Cole. I can't remember his last name, but yeah, and then back in Jersey Flegg, and then played another game of reserve grade. So I'd only played 2 reserve grade games, playing local A grade the year before, and then out of nowhere got a phone call. I was at my wife's parents' house at Catherine Field at the time, got a phone call to say playing first grade this week, and I thought, geez, I'm only just getting my head around playing reserve grade, and playing first grade against Ricky Stewart and Brad Clyde and all those sorts of guys, and I don't think I got much sleep in that week, the few days leading up to the game. But yeah, Steve Georgalis was captain that week, and it was a funny sort of atmosphere because the Magpies that year had an unenviable record of having the most points put on them more than any other team in NRL history, so they were getting pumped every week, and I think Tommy had sort of nearly given up by that stage, and he wasn't really around at training much during the week, and Georgie pretty much ran most of the sessions, but we used to train out at Claymore there, so it was pretty sort of average sort of training fields we trained on, but it was still exciting for me as a young 19-year-old, like running around with all the boys I've been watching on TV like only a year earlier. So so it was an exciting week.
Yeah, and then you mentioned the atmosphere. Now, I could be totally wrong here, but the crowds were they fell off a cliff after that return game to the new stadium against Balmain, and then I think the crowds dropped to about 6,000 or 7,000 for each match. But there were a fair few Canterbury fans there that day. They probably outnumbered the Magpies. And you mentioned a few of those Canterbury blokes. You mentioned Stewart and Clyde, Darren Britt, Steve Price, El Masri, Darren Smith, Rod Silver, Willie Tallow. And I've got this vivid memory in my head of the crowd where I was kind of sitting. I was about 11 or 12, and watching the crowd get absolutely stuck into Ricky Stewart, because I don't know how he done it, but the touches and the ref missed every single one, but he was getting in the cheekiest little uppercuts in all these tackles. Yeah, no, and I guess it was part of Ricky's game too. You know, he was getting a little bit older, so he probably had to, you know, throw in a couple of shortcuts into his game. But can you remember, like, how much do you remember of your time on the field and interactions and running into blokes like Darren Britt and Clyde and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't really remember who in particular I ran into. I remember I was way underdone. I was a 19-year-old that just came out of like park footy, so I was way underdone. I remember being exhausted within about a minute of being out there, because I think I'd burn off so much nervous energy beforehand, and then was running around like a little fly trying to do too much. And I think I only had probably 2 or 3 hit-ups, and every time I was just like running into a brick wall. I got winded during one of the hit-ups, and I remember getting up, feeling sorry for myself, you know, and you're like, gasping for air after you've been winded. I remember Travis Baker was playing in the centres, and you could see I was struggling, and he gave me some, I don't know what you'd call the words, but he just said, toughen up, Ray. So I thought, right then, I better toughen up. I just got up and kept carrying on. I do remember one, what was the goal-kicking winger, not before Haslam, Daryl Halligan.
Yeah.
I remember he went over for a try, and because I was like extra keen, I sort of chased him till the last minute and just got his collar of his jersey and nearly dragged him in the touch. And I remember him getting up and rubbing his neck, and I was sort of proud of myself that I sort of choked him, but he still got the 4-pointer. But it was just like daunting, and sort of I was a bit overawed playing against all those blokes that had played Origins. And you mentioned Willie Talau. It's funny how things work. I ended up actually playing with him in Salford.
Yeah.
Probably more than, how many years later would it have been? Like
12
years later or
12,
something?
yeah, 10, yeah, something like that.
So he was a good bloke. And funny enough, Steve Georgalis ended up coaching me at reserve grade at West a couple of years later too. So, yeah.
And I guess unless you're a Magpies tragic, the name Travis Baker probably doesn't mean that much to people. But at the time, he was one of those guys that, you know, if you have a discussion about, you know, gun plays that kind of just didn't, you know, take advantage of their talent. So I guess Travis Baker would be one of them. He was a really, really handy player, and he kind of just didn't, you know, get that week to week opportunity to perform at a higher level. But so you were at Mac Saints before that. Did you spend some time? You were at Campbelltown City Kangaroos as well?
Yeah, I sort of floated around a lot as a junior. I played soccer as a young fella, and then 1 year of AFL, and then my next door neighbour, Gordon Pinney, was coaching Campbelltown City. He's a tragic league. Yeah,
I know Gordon very, very well, actually. He used to coach my little brother Gary at the Warriors.
Oh, did he? Yeah, so he sort of, Mum wasn't too keen, but he talked Mum into letting me play footy. So I played a year there with him at Campbelltown City, and then made the mini Magpies there, and then made some mates there, and I sort of jumped ship to Eaglevale. Eaglevale was sort of like the gun team at the time, so I went to play for them for a couple of years, and then some other mates that I ended up going to school with were playing at the Collies at Campbelltown Collegians, so I went there for a couple of years, and then ended up getting a stress fracture in my spine when I was probably about 14, 15, so I had a year off footy, and then when I went back when I was 17, I think I had my last couple of junior years at Macarthur Saints, and then played A grade for them, and then went to West.
Penny's going to love that mention, by the way. I'll message him on Facebook later and say, you're not going to believe it, you're a star.
He loves it. Yeah. I mentioned him on the footy show years ago too. I did an interview with JT when I was at the Cowboys, and Big Chief Harrigan, he said, we want to get to know you a bit. Who was your first ever coach? He just asked me a few random questions, and I said his name, and he rang me afterwards. He was beaming. He said, everyone's ringing me. And, it was fun.
So at the end of 1999, though, obviously the Magpies merged with Balmain, and only a handful of Magpies players get across. And I guess they're the established guys like the McGuinness boys and Georgalis, Scandalis, I think Cherry Mesher and Brenton Pomeroy, I think, got a run from memory.
Yep.
So how did that Parramatta deal come about? Was it another case of, you chasing them and getting a trial, or did they come calling to you?
No, to be honest, I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, as I said, I was in a system where blokes had normally been, playing like Harold Matthews, SG Balls, Jersey Flag, sort of just grown up in the system and knew how things work, whereas I was just a young battler, like apprentice carpenter from Campbelltown, who first year in footy and didn't really know anyone or how things operated and that, and was just sort of thrust into the limelight, played an NRL game and then played the rest of the year in reserve grade, and people started to notice me a little bit, and then someone at the club, Steve Murphy, he's assistant coach at Para now. She came up to me at the end of the year and he said, "Oh, have you got a manager, mate?" And I said, "No, manager, I didn't realise that was a thing." And he gave me, what's his name? He's Teddy's manager.
Oh, was that before Isaac Moses?
Yeah, not Isaac Moses. He's quite a popular. He was going to court for something a couple of years ago.
Oh, Wayne Beavis, not Wayne Beavis.
No.
I know the bloke you're talking of. I can't believe I've forgotten his name. But anyway, we'll come back to that in a second.
Yeah. Anyway, so anyway, rang him, signed up with him, and then didn't know what to do. Sort of just followed his lead, and he said, "Oh, go to Parramatta. They're a good club. They're keen and that." So it was for $20,000, and at the time, $20,000 was like, whoa, like to me. So as a young bloke, so I said, "Yeah, bloody oath, go to Para." And then Para was like another level, man. Like I'd gone to a club where you train in Claymore, and your gym was like a factory unit that they just chucked a few bits and pieces in, whereas Para was like ultra professional, like multiple footy fields and state of the art gym gear and everything, and sort of training with blokes that had been in the system for probably like 8 years or something. And I was a bit sort of, I don't know, I felt like I was behind the 8 ball there, and sort of just had a year in Jersey Flag there. It was good. It was a good eye opener. I learned some good skills and stuff like that, but didn't do a lot there, to be honest. Sort of just floundered at Parramatta, and then came back to the West the year after, and Bobby Lidner was coaching there. So and then played a year or two in reserve grade at West with him, and then sort of had a gutful of working as a chippy all day and then training at night time, and just needed a break. And then that's when I went back to Macarthur Saints for a year, and won a comp with them, which was exciting. And then I hope I'm not going too fast for a year.
No, absolutely, go for it.
Yeah, and then so then won a comp with them. That was good to go back and play with some mates and stuff like that, and sort of probably got a bit of more passion back for the game after it just became a bit of a job sort of thing, I suppose. And then a couple of mates said to me, "Oh, like you got all this talent, don't waste it," sort of thing. And not that I was not a James Tedesco or anything like that, but like I was an okay front row.
Yeah.
And then so I think at the time then, who was coaching then? Peter Gentle, I think, was coaching West.
Yep.
So I went there, and then at the start they had a few props already, so they had to sort of play my way back in. I was playing a couple of games for Max Saints, and then they'd need me in West, and then by the end of the season I was playing full time with West again, and then did that for another year. Actually, I think it might have been Georgie that was coach at that time. Did that for a year, and then another year. I'm losing track of years here, but then at the end of one of those years, they said they didn't want me anymore. So I went to France and played. I went to France at the end of the Australian footy season and played about 5 months there for a club called Lesignan. And then it was weird. Like they were a bit dodgy as well. Like sort of halfway through the season, they realised they couldn't make the semis, so we had a big meeting. They called all us imports in. It was me and a bloke called Nathan Vag that played 1 or 2 games for Cronulla, and a couple of Aussies and that. And they said, "Oh, we're going broke. The club's folding." So they just gave us 1 month pay, and then just sent us home. And then as soon as we all left, they kept playing. So they just wanted to get rid of the Aussies because they couldn't make the semis. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me because by the end of the year, I was doing a lap of honour with West Tigers. But rewind a bit. So as soon as I came back, I rang West again, said, "Oh, can I get another run?" They said, "Oh no, we're right for front rowers." So I went out to it was actually Macca. Warren McDonald put me on to Thelmy. In the Group 6, they said, "Oh, they need a front rower." So went and signed with them, did one training session, and then 2 days later,
back up, didn't you?
Yeah, 2 days later, Georgie, the coach of West Reserve Grade, rings me and said, "Oh, we played last night and the front rowers turned it up. I need someone like you." So I said, "Well, I rang you last week. I wanted to run," but I said, "Macca put me on to Thelmy." I said, "You got to get me a release now. So if you can get me a release, I'll come play for you," which they did. And then, I sort of played with a bit more freedom then, I think, because before then, I was sort of always trying to do my best to get into reserve grade and always overthinking everything. But by that stage, it had already flicked me once, and I thought it just was just playing for fun and enjoying my footy, and it must have been good for me, and I played some good footy. And then out of nowhere, one day I was on a job site on the North Shore, just working as a chippy, and got a phone call from Warren McDonald saying Sheensy's named you in the first grade this week. I couldn't believe it. So I thought, "Oh, right, I'm leaving now." And went to training, and then I was playing against the Sharks at Shark Park from the West Tigers debut that week.
And then that was that the day that was that famous Benji step, the 60-metre run of the trial, and I think Fitzhenry scores the try, or is that that was a big no-look pass to, I think it was Paddy Richards. Yeah,
I could be wrong. It might have been Fitzy, but yeah, they played on a lot of his highlights reels. Big no-look pass to the right wing, and yeah, we beat them something like 50-12 or something. Yeah, it was a great day.
And you spoke about your time after going back from Parramatta back in the Campbelltown competition. I was there at Campbelltown Stadium, that A-grade grand final. I think it was the last A-grade grand final, or the last A-grade grand final in Campbelltown.
Really?
Yeah, as it stood, like since then we've had, grade teams playing Group 6 and Sydney combined comps and all that stuff. But I do remember, and people in the crowd and I remember people in the crowd, Max Saints fans or whatever, just going mad about how you could, and I mean going mad in a good way. You could be in a tackle with 3 or 4 blokes on you, hanging off you halfway to the ground and popping these amazing offloads. And and again, I would have been, whatever I was then, 15, 16. And your dead set looked like you had 4 arms because you always got the ball away. Was that always a trait of yours? Like, obviously, you've got the big arms and you've got the big body. Was that always something you had in your game, the offloading traffic?
Yeah, I was always, I think the opposing teams on their tip sheet said, Cashmere is a compulsive offloader. So, yeah, it's always something that was in my game. I didn't really try to do it. It sort of just came naturally. And to be honest, as my career went on, it actually became a bit of a problem and it held me back from getting picked in first grade teams to the point where Peter Gentle actually sort of got it out of me. He was coaching me at some stage at West Reserve Grade. It wasn't until I sort of got a handle on it and was more selective with my offloads that I became more consistent, reliable, and got some more runs in first grade. So yeah, I've always been sort of known for my offloads, but as I said, I had to sort of learn to control it.
So you mentioned round 21, your West Tigers debut. So that's game 2 in the NRL for you. The full-time score is 46-6. A couple of weeks later, you're back in the team, and it's another huge win. And it's against Canterbury at Homebush, 54-2, and then round 26, you're in the team for the final round of the regular season. I think you was already confirmed for the top 4, and I think Penrith rolled you, but I think by then you guys knew you were top 4. What was it like for you being around that squad? You'd played, the final couple of games of the season. Was there any discussion with Tim Sheens or the coaching staff about pushing to keep that spot in the 17, or was it more you were holding down a position for someone else to come back into the team? What was your role there? Were you just happy to be along for the ride, or?
Yeah, I was just happy to be along for the ride. Like, I was never at a stage where I thought, I'm definitely going to get picked in the first grade team this week. I was just happy to get a run, and then if another game came down the track, then so be it. But it was fun. Like when you look back and you think, oh, I was in the team for the last competition game, and then I got done for the semis. You look at it in black and white. Well, Mark O'Neill was out with injury, and he came back. He was the captain of the team before he got injured. Scott Prince took over and was captain all through the finals and the grand final. But Mark O'Neill came back, so obviously he's going to get a run before I will. But it was funny because Sheensy sort of brought me in after that Penrith game that we lost, and I think he might have been trying to justify like leaving me out of the team, which he didn't have to, you know. Like he's Tim Sheens. I'm a young bloke that's played 4 NRL games, but anyway, it was good of him to do it. And he said, oh, you know, you missed the tackle here, or you went left when you should have went right, or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was something in defence. And I said, oh, I'm sure I didn't do that. And he said, yeah, it was about the, I don't know, 52nd minute or something. And I went back and checked the video, and I thought, I can't find anywhere any time when I did that. And then I found out what he was talking about, and it was Scando that did it. So I went back to him, and I said, sorry, mate, sorry to bother you, but can you just get that vision up? And he got it up on his computer. And I said, I think it might have been Scando. And he goes, oh, shit, yeah, it was Scando. Sorry, mate. I said, that's all right. So Scando's out of the team this week, and I'm in there. he just laughed. But he let me like go on the journey with him, and I went to every training session leading up to the grand final. The day before the game, I was on ANZ Stadium training with him, like running a defence for him. Got helicopters buzzing around in the sky above us. It was so exciting, you know. And I did a lap of honour with him, and I was in the sheds before and after the game. So yeah, it was a great ride.
I actually spoke to Scando in one of the early episodes of Top of the Props, and I mentioned, I brought up the fact that there are still some naysayers out there that are, you know, obviously not West Tigers fans that say stuff like, oh, they got lucky, you know, it was a lucky premiership. But and I said the same thing to John Scandalis, you guys flogged everybody. You guys went on that amazing run, and then in the finals, you hammered the Cowboys by 50, you hammered the Broncos, you hammered the Dragons, then you hammered the Cowboys again in the grand final. I don't know what else you guys have done. It was an amazing run. What do you say to people? Do you ever get that in public? You know, from you know, elbows to the ribs and say, oh, you know, don't know how you guys done that, but you guys were amazing.
No, I've never heard anyone say that, to be honest.
Oh, it's probably just my brother. He's a Manly fan.
Yeah, it sort of did come out of the blue, though, didn't it? Because we weren't really doing much. Before then, and not much after, to be honest. But just one of those years where everything clicked. I think they just played so fast too. I say they instead of we because I still don't. They sort of see myself as part of it, even though I did play a few games. But yeah, I remember Dean Hallertau, dummy half. He was just so quick. Like you'd get all Gibbsy and Scando and Toddy Payton and that getting a bit of momentum, and then when teams were on the back foot, Dean Hallertau was at a dummy half, just making 10, 15 metre runs, and then he'd come off the bench and do that, and had little Robbie Farah out of there. He was still young and electric, and Benji out wide, and Paddy. It was just, and Hodge out at the back. It was just a great team, wasn't it? Just real fast. I remember everything they did was fast. Even the speed off the line, like in defence, was so fast. That was Bryce Gibbs' best attribute, I think. In defence, he was so quick off the line and in the face of attacking teams, and just stifled them, you know, before they could get a good run up. It was just tackling them. And
he was a good legs tackler too. Like he could, and I guess he'd probably, like if he played in 2020 and tried to defend the same way, coaches would probably try to get it out of him because, like you said, his line speed was that good that he could grasp someone. And I think, in my mind, that's a dominant tackle. So he should have that extra second to be able to hold on to the legs and keep him down. But the referees now would probably ping him and work against him. But you're right. And the other thing about West Tigers too was you guys in 2005 changed the game. So for years before that, we saw the Roosters and the Bulldogs and even Penrith to a certain extent. It was definitely about line speed, but it was about how ferocious you were defensively, particularly the Roosters, that iron curtain wall they had. And they would just murder teams. And then all of a sudden West Tigers come along and they're just throwing flick passes, no-look passes, chips on the first, second tackle. It was just it completely changed the game.
Mm.
And, and what about for you though? Like, so you said, so obviously you got to go along for the ride, and you were there grand final week and all the rest of it. Can you explain what that premiership did for the local Sydney Southwest area? Because you would know this just as well as me, being a local as well, and the tough times for the Magpies in the 90s and all the rest, and getting smashed in 98 and 99, and even when the merger came along, yeah, competitive at times, but always around 9th or 10th, and have a good week and then have a couple of bad ones. It was crazy what that did in the local region. I remember after the grand final, Appin Road, and for people that don't know, Appin Road runs from the middle of Campbelltown, obviously through Campbelltown and up St. Helens Park and on the way to obviously Appin. I remember up the top there near Bradbury, and there were thousands of people just walking the streets and walking down Appin Road and screaming and cheering, and Queen Street was packed, and I'm sure you were told about it, but you were obviously at ANZ Stadium. Can you explain what the difference was before the 2005 West Tigers came along for Campbelltown, and then what it did for the region afterwards, particularly with guys like Benji Marshall and Scott Prince and Brett Hodgson, all these poster boys that became superstars of the game?
Yeah, I think it just gave the area a team to be proud of, because before that, obviously, Westfield Battlers, but people were still sort of proud of them, and then you merged with Balmain, and you had people that weren't sort of happy about that, and as you said, like, West Tigers didn't have a lot of success early, but then it just sort of solidified the brand and gave something for everyone to be proud of and hang on to, and like Benji was probably the poster boy for that, and he was really good for the brand in the club as well, and just people felt proud to be a West Tigers fan, and it was good. It was good to have that after so many years of having a local team that didn't do much, and people were just proud to walk around in that jersey or that polo shirt on,
And Scandalis actually, I pushed and I got some info out of him about Mad Monday and the celebrations after the grand final, and Fitzhenry lost his premiership ring somewhere in Maroubra or something like that, and what was that like? I'm sure you're a part of it. What was the celebrations like after the grand final?
Mate, I went a bit too hard too early. They had beer on the sideline, and I grabbed a 6-pack, and I think I nearly finished it by the end of the lap of honour. and then we're in the sheds, and Johnny Howard was in there, I remember, and Dawn Fraser and a couple of other celebrities, and it was pretty exciting, and we're getting stuck in there as well, and I actually grabbed a couple of lanyards, like that let you into the VIP areas and that, and off some other boys that weren't using theirs, and went out and grabbed 2 of my mates that were in the crowd and dragged them into the shed. So there's a couple of random Campbelltown boys in there as well.
Beautiful.
And then by the time that's all sort of died down, we got on the bus, and I dragged my mates on the bus as well. And then we went to, I think it was Balmain Leagues Club first, and then I got off the bus, walking through the doors of there. It was like trying to walk through a mosh pit at a heavy metal concert. It was like you had to literally like squeeze your way through people, everyone patting you on the back and rubbing you on the head, and straight up to a VIP room there, and it was like open bar and everything, and just chock-a-block, everyone real excited, passing around the trophy and everything. Then went down to a stage area in an auditorium where they introduced the team to the crowd, and then went out and showed them the trophy and all that sort of stuff, and then did the same thing at West Ashfield. Went to West Ashfield.
Was that the same night or?
Yeah, same night.
Jesus.
Yeah, so it was a massive night. And then my wife and sister were with me, and then after West Ashfield, it had been a big day, and I got stuck in a week too early, as I said. So I went home and slept for a few hours, and then the bus was due to arrive at Campbelltown, I think at 8 or 9 in the morning or something like that. So I walked down, so I just lived at the East Campbelltown then, so I walked down there and met the boys at Campbelltown, and went on like a stage that they had there, and they introduced us all there and presented the trophy to the team, to the public there, and that was exciting. Then got back on the bus, went to Leichhardt Oval in the morning, and then they announced the team like in number order, like number 1 Brett Hodgson and all that. And then got to about 16, and then I was standing in the tunnel with Sheensy, and then he realised that I was one of the only players there that didn't play that day, and I wouldn't get an out. So he said, when they say my name, give me a piggyback out. So I forgot to mention, when we left West Campbelltown, they brought in roast beef rolls for us all to eat after a big night on the sauce. You know, they thought, oh, boys probably need a feed. And I'm not a great traveller as it is, so after a night on the drink and then a big roast beef roll, I got to Leichhardt Oval and didn't agree with me. I ran straight into the change rooms and it all came out. I had a big up and under. So I just had a massive vomit, and Sheensy goes to me, when they call my name out, piggyback me out onto the stage. So I'm like, right, okay. They call his name out, and I'm piggybacking him out in the hot, baking sun through all the crowd out on the stage. He's not light either, big Sheensy, but... Yeah, so
he's an old front rower himself.
Say again?
He's an old front rower himself, so he wouldn't be light.
No, yeah, he captain coached Campbelltown City, actually, to a premiership back in his day.
Yeah, 83, I think it was, at the old Arana Park.
Yeah, cool.
So after all that, in the blink of an eye, and I please correct me if I'm wrong, Graham Murray, the Cowboys coach, saw you earlier in the year playing Reggie's, but we'll get to that in a second. All of a sudden, you go from all these celebrations with West Tigers, you know, Campbelltown boy, you've done good, you're part of the squad, and all of a sudden you're in Townsville and you're doing pre-season with the team you just beat. Yeah,
I know.
What was that all like?
Yeah, it was strange, because I actually signed with the Cowboys. We used to, because before I played first grade for West Tigers that year, the reserve grade team West Magpies used to play at Gosford Stadium quite often.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but we used to follow the Cowboys around a bit, and so I think that's why you saw me playing reserve grade. The Cowboys played after us at Gosford a couple of times, and then straight after the grand final, as I said, I got a skinful, and then like a few days earlier, I'd had a meeting with Graham Murray and Peter Parr, the CEO at the time, or the footy manager, whatever he was. So I was all excited about winning the grand final and going to the Cowboys soon and everything. And I saw Peter Parr in the tunnel. I went, "Oh, Peter, how you going, mate?" Went up to him all excited, and then he was like, he just had a death in the family. Then I realised, I should probably tone it down a bit. I don't think I'll see you in a couple of weeks, mate. And then, and in the week leading up to it, it came out that I'd signed with the Cowboys. So all the Tigers boys were sort of ribbing me during the week, saying, "Oh, who are you going to go for this week, mate? Who are you backing for this week?" And I'm like, obviously us. But, yeah, and then as you said, went up there and felt a bit sort of weird being there since we just beat them in the grand final, as you said. But
did any of the Cowboys get into you?
Nah, the Cowboys were fine about it. They sort of never really said anything, and it might have been different had I played in the grand final, maybe. But yeah, it wasn't really much mentioned about it, to be honest. Well,
I'm really excited to talk about this section of your career here, because it's a great story of not giving up and obviously getting your NRL debut back in 1999, and then being in the wilderness for a little, if that's a fair enough word to use. The great story with West Tigers in 2005, and then you get to the Cowboys, and this is where you showed what you could do. 54 games in three seasons. You get a City Origin cap in that time. You played for City down in Wollongong. How proud of you of those 3 years at the Cowboys? Because you didn't just play good footy. You became a cult hero up there. And there's some great stories on the Townsville Bulletin, which is still online from around that time. They loved you up there, and you played some great football. When you look back on that period there, yeah, it was great to be part of that West Tigers squad and be there for the grand final. But what was it like to be able to prove your wares and play some really, really consistent footy to the point where you're in the City Origin team?
Yeah, it was great. The Cowboys was the first opportunity I ever had to work as a full-time professional rugby league player. Like prior to that, I'd always worked as a carpenter during the day and then trained in the evening with the team. So to do that was awesome, and I sort of reaped the benefits from it, because it's the fittest I've ever been as a player, and Billy Johnson's got a lot to do with that too. He was the trainer when I went up there, and he whipped me into shape, and probably the climate up there has got a bit to do with it as well. You know, like you can't help but get fit if you're running around in that sort of humidity and heat. But yeah, and just the professionalism of the place and everything. Yeah, the first year was a bit slow. I only played 6 NRL games in my first year, but I was sort of just finding my feet in Townsville, and then I think I missed round 1 in my second year there, and then after that I played every game from then on for the next 2 years, and probably about half a dozen games in that second season, I realised I had that feeling where I know I'm going to get. I sort of craved it, and I saw other blokes had it. It's an awesome feeling to know that you're going to be in first grade next week, no matter what. Like you could miss a tackle or two, or you could have not a great game. To know that you're part of that NRL team every week was awesome, and that's the only time I ever felt it. When I was at the Cowboys for the first time, certainly. So, yeah, it was great to be an established NRL player finally after battling for years, sort of playing reserve grade and working during the day, as I said. And, yeah, it just felt really good. And it was like a one-team town, so it was a pretty big deal. When you were there, you felt pretty special everywhere you went. People were looking at you and asking you autographs and getting interviewed on TV and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it was a real buzz. I really enjoyed it.
And that's another thing too with all that football, and you know, like you just said, you know, really proud of what you've done up there for yourself personally. But what is it like? And I guess we're a bit biased on the Top of the Props podcast, but like obviously it's an old saying in football, you know, front rowers lay the foundation for what you know the pretty boys do afterwards, if you want to call them that. What were the differences? You know, playing, I guess you didn't have that much time, you know, playing for, you know, Scott Prince and the Benji Marshalls, particularly the halfback, who I guess more back then rather than now where you got halfbacks and 5'8" playing either side. You have a dominant halfback back then who kind of pushes the you know, the pigs through the middle and you know, really gets up you to play. What was it like not just playing first grade with Jonathan Thurston, but having to lay the foundations for him, and someone like a very underrated player like an Aaron Payne as well? Did you have a great sense of pride that you were laying the foundations and making those meters and setting the team up for wins where, you know, the Thurstons and Matt Bowens could seal the wins later in the piece?
Yeah, for sure I did, because as a prop I always felt like I did my job and I did take the team forward, and it was frustrating, especially in some weaker teams and reserve grade teams and that, where you feel like you're taking the team forward but you don't have the players to put the icing on the cake, so to speak. So when those couple of years I was at the Cowboys, it was awesome, because whenever I knew that if I did my job and got the team forward, I could just sit back and enjoy the show. I knew that they'd do their job and put the points on the board. So yeah, I suppose there's a bit of pride involved, but it was also very satisfying, you know, to know that if I did my job, they'd do theirs. So yeah, it was a really good time.
And like obviously you ended up back up at West Tigers, and that's your local club, so to speak. But was there satisfaction in not proving them wrong, but showing them on a week-to-week basis from afar? Most times, you know, from thousands of kilometres away because you're up there in Townsville. But was it satisfying for you to show the rest of the game, you know, and your former teammates and the West Tigers that you could do this and do it on a regular basis and play some really good football week in, week out?
Yeah, it was for sure, yeah. I never wanted to leave the Tigers. Like, as you said, they were my local team. So when the Cowboys offered me a deal, I actually said to them, like, it wasn't a massive deal. I think it was $60,000 plus match payments. But I said to Warren McDonald, who was the recruitment manager at the time, I'll stay for less. I'll stay for 50, whatever, like no match payments. But they didn't have anything for me, so yeah, I went to the Cowboys, and it was satisfying to show them, you know, like I can do it. Like this is what I can do, and all that sort of stuff. And in the end, it came around my last year there, 2008. Sheensy was coach of City Origin, and he picked me in that team, so that was a bit sort of that was gratifying as well, you know, that he saw me playing well enough to pick me in his rep team, and he was the coach that sort of let me go originally, so that was a good feeling.
And it's full circle when you're blowing chunks and carrying the coach after a grand final and a couple of years later you're back in Wollongong, and he's your coach in the rep team. It's a good story. And that night in Wollongong, you play alongside guys like Mitch Pearce, Luke Lewis, Mark O'Mealy, Anasta, Hodgson, Hayne, all huge names at that time. Against the country pack, Brett White, Badiris, Fitzgibbon, LaFranchi, Hindmarsh, Andrew Ryan. I guess because there was such a gap between your first game in 99 and then kind of settling into first grade, years later, was there a bit of reality and a bit of father time stuff when Salford gave you a call and that deal came about? Because I'm sure that deal in Salford, and I'm happy not to talk numbers because I'm old school and I don't like talking about money and all that kind of stuff. But before you moved from Townsville across to Salford, you said about the Cowboys and Townsville. Since I moved to Townsville, I've got married, I've had a kid, I've bought a house, I've made a name for myself, and I've got the opportunity to make some decent money for my family. Was there a bit of reality and time slipping away, which obviously is not your fault, that's just how it all worked out? Was there much of that behind your move to the Super League, or was it more you were content with what you'd done and you were happy to test yourself on the other side of the world?
Nah, not at all. To be honest, I know people say no regrets and that, but I actually regret going to the Super League so earlier.
Yeah.
I had a year to run on my contract still at the Cowboys, and probably bad timing with when I signed that contract. I think the start of the 2007 season, I'd only played probably about 10 games for the Cowboys, and I was starting to play pretty well, and I had an offer to go to the Gold Coast the following season, which I agreed on principle with, and then the Cowboys came back in with a sort of matched their deal after I'd already agreed. So then I flipped and agreed to stay at the Cowboys for 2 years. And then by the end of that year, we were playing in the semis. I was playing well, scoring a couple of tries and taking the team forward. And then started the 2008 season, made the City team, as you mentioned, playing starting prop every week for the team. And I know money shouldn't come into it, but I couldn't help but know that, like, I signed too early on a pretty average deal, and there was blokes front rows in reserve grade who obviously I was playing better than because I was a starting first grade front rower, and they were on twice as much money as me. And at the time, I had a mate, Dave Fayuma, who just moved from the Cowboys to Huddersfield in England, and he was telling me about how good it is. Like, you can use these offshore accounts to, put your money there tax-free, and at the time, the English pound was worth 3 times as much as the Aussie dollar. So there was big money to be made there, and I was 28, and I still had another year after 2008 on the crap money, like half of the blokes in reserve grade were on. So I thought, like, at the time, like, blokes didn't play till I was 35 then. They normally retired at about 30, so I thought, geez, it's going to be all over for me in a couple of years. I need to make some money so I can set myself up a bit. So that's when I actually went to the Cowboys and asked for a release so I could shop around in England, and Salford came up with the best deal out of all the clubs. And looking back now, like, I ended up playing like park footy at least till I was 36. So probably sold myself a bit short there. Like, so I could have my time again. I probably would have seen that contract out with the Cowboys and probably played in the NRL till I was 32, 33, and then looked to go overseas. But everyone's got 20/20 vision with hindsight. You only make the best decisions with the info you got at the time. But we still had a good experience. I lived in England for 3 years. It's good taking in a different culture and all that, and then ended up coming back and having another year or half a year with the Tigers in 2012, which is a good way to sort of finish things off. And it's like I say to my wife, like, if I could say to a 17, 18-year-old me that I'm going to play 68 NRL games, live in France for a little bit, live in England for 3 years, live in Townsville for 3 years, and play 150 like top grade games, as you said, all up, I would have been pretty happy with that. So certainly not complaining. Probably would have done a couple of things differently, but yeah, had a good career overall.
And I think you sell yourself a little bit short with your time at Salford. It was 72 games in 3 years, but not just that. Doing a bit of research for the podcast, the Salford fans, they bloody love you. And there's a team, I can't remember off the top of my head what the team was, but it's like a modern greatest Salford side, something like that. And you made that team on votes from the fans. And you've come up in discussion of greatest imports, of greatest import front rowers and all this other stuff. Do you look back on that? Are you aware of what you did in those 3 years at Salford?
Not really. I know I got along with the fans because I always chatted with them after the games and stuff like that. Maybe they liked me because I was friendly with them. I don't know, but yeah, I went all right when I was there. Like it was a battling club. Like they didn't have the resources that a lot of the bigger clubs had, but yeah, certainly did my best when I was there. We didn't win heaps of games, but we had a couple of good wins against some bigger clubs, which was good to keep everyone interested. But yeah, I don't know what to say there. It's nice to hear that they think so highly of me, and yeah, there's some good people there at Salford.
I'll have to send you through some of the screenshots and some of the comments so you can read them yourself. So look, you do come full circle. You come back and you're playing Group 6. I think you spent some time at the Camden Rams, at Campbelltown City as well. Unfortunately, that A-grade comp, when you're playing for Max Saints back in the day, I think it was against East Campbelltown at Campbelltown Stadium. And then full circle, you're back at the end of your career. Unfortunately, there's no local competition for grade players, and the likes of East Campbelltown and who are now in the Sydney Shield, they were originally playing Group 6. Campbelltown City, they're forced to play in Group 6 as well, which is not much of a stretch because they have a rich history in the Group 6 comp anyway. And we spoke about Tim Sheens before as well. What's your take on the health of rugby league in the Campbelltown, Sydney South West area at the moment? Unfortunately, we've got teams at the moment, 15s, 16s, 17s, local sides that unfortunately are having to go and play, joint competitions in Canterbury and Cronulla and, some Parramatta teams and all this other stuff. Do you have much of an opinion on the way local footy's going in this area, or is it kind of, that's just the way of the world? Because I guess the other argument is if you look at country footy in all sports, people are having to move out of their local towns to find work and all the other stuff, and some people, unfortunately, kids aren't playing as long. What's your opinion on where footy's at in the Southwest?
Oh, to be honest, I'm probably not as educated on it as I need to be to make a proper comment about it. The only thing I can think of is, I know I'm probably the last generation of the West Juniors, but I know when I was growing up, obviously we had a West Magpies team that played at Campbelltown Stadium. We'd go watch them on the weekends, and then we all aspired to play in the mini Magpies squad, which I did in under 11s and under 12s, and there was sort of a light at the end of the tunnel, like if you can make the Harold Matthews team and the SG Ball team and the Jersey Flegg team, and then you might play President's Cup and reserve grade, and then obviously first grade if you're good enough. So it's a shame that sort of system isn't in place anymore. Like you lose a lot of kids because it just seems too hard. Like the NRL seems, that's something that happens in the city or too far away. My nephew, actually, his name's Ray Redmond. He plays for Camden now. He lives at Camden with my half brother Matt, and he was in the West Tigers train-on squad for a bit there, and they had to train at Concord. Like he's a young apprentice carpenter now too, and he was working during the day and then driving to Concord and nearly falling asleep after training on his way home. It's a long way to go for blokes that, like, he grew up in Campbelltown. He lives in Camden now, but for kids in Campbelltown, there's not really. I don't know. There might be some program in place that I'm not aware of, but it just seems a bit far detached now. Like the West Tigers home base is at Concord, and obviously that needs to be that way for whatever reason that I'm not aware of. Probably, I don't know, halfway between Balmain and Campbelltown. I don't know, but just seems that sort of pathway is, obviously they do have pathways in place. I don't want to look like I'm criticising West Tigers, but it's just not as obvious and in your face and as it was when I was a young bloke. You had the Magpies just down the road. Like you trained at Campbelltown. You saw the first grade boys walking around all the time, and
that's the thing I was going to say. Like when I was growing up, you'd go to MacArthur Square and you'd see Ken McGuinness or John Scandales or whoever just walking around shopping, or the head coach Warren Ryan would come and watch you randomly play a junior game at Arana Park 2 or Worrell Park or whatever. So I guess there's a detachment, like you said, a word you just used then, a bit of local tribalism. But I guess that's just the way it is with a merger.
With a joint venture, that's right. Like it's probably still, well, it definitely is still that way in Townsville, and I don't know, like maybe Penrith and Cronulla and Manly, they probably still have that sort of feeling. But it's just the way it is. But I suppose there's probably West Tigers fans in Concord and Burwood and that, like near where they train, that might experience that sort of thing. I don't know, but it's just the way of the world, as you said, isn't it?
Ray, I wanted to thank you very much, mate, and just repeating for everyone out there as well, 150 first grade games at Salford, West Tigers, the Magpies and the Cowboys, a City Origin rep jersey in 2008. And it's just a great story, Ray, and you should be very proud of your career. And you're still living local as well?
Oh, we moved out to Bargo 5 years ago, mate.
Beautiful.
I just work at the Tarmore coal mine, just 5 minutes down the road, so we've got a nice little setup here.
So are you officially retired?
Yeah, mate, yeah. It's all over. 40 years old, turned 40 this year, so just focusing on the family and doing family activities now, and going to the kids' sport and stuff like that.
Ray, I'll send you through the comments from the Salford fans, but I just want to say thanks again, mate, and for being a guest on Top of the Props. It's been a pleasure speaking to you tonight.
No worries, Curtis. Thanks for having me, mate.